Today, I'm going to go through the top 10 stock trout fishing tips for beginners. What is up, Outdoor Mavericks, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new or just getting started into stock trout fishing, this video is just for you. And we're starting out the list at number 10. Starting out the list at tip number 10 is to get the right gear and the right setup. And when it comes to stock trout fishing, you can keep it simple. You're going to need somewhere between a 6.5 to a 9-foot light action rod, something with a nice light tip. For me, most of my trout rods are in the 2 to 6 pound class, and my go-to is an Okuma SST. Now for line, I like 10 pound as my main line because it casts really smooth through the eyelets, and I like 6 pound monofilament as my leader line. Reason being, you want to maximize your casting ability, but you also want to keep your poundage on your line light. And when it comes to a reel, you can keep it simple with a 1,000 or a 2,000 size reel. You don't have to go to a 3,000 or 4,000. That's completely overkill. Small reel is completely fine. Now you're gonna need other terminal gear. So you're talking about hooks, you're talking about weights, you're talking about swivels, then you're gonna get into your baits and your spinners. But also don't forget, you're gonna need a pair of pliers and a trout fishing net. Those are must-have pieces of gear. Get gear that you're gonna be able to use, and it's gonna be able to work when you get out on the water. Sometimes simple is the best when you're beginning into something. And that stays true when it comes to stock trout fishing. But coming into tip number 9 is to learn 2 particular techniques to help you get better, and that is to be fishing with a bobber and to be plunking. Now, the reason why I recommend going with a couple techniques to start and really getting good at those, you can hone in and focus your skills on a couple techniques that work on a lot of different bodies of water. Firstly, with a bobber, you can fish bobber with a bait underneath in pretty much any water conditions. We're talking about ponds, little streams, creeks, rivers, lakes, reservoirs. It fishes on any body of water. So being able to fish with a bobber and some sort of bait underneath it is a critical technique and probably one of the easiest ones to get into if you're beginning into stock trout fishing. The other technique is plunking. For me, I like to use a Carolina style rigging with a sliding weight right over the swivel and then having my leader something that I'm plunking off the bottom. And for me, typically this is power bait, this is worms, or mice tail, the plunking style types of baits. And this technique, again, for a beginner, super easy setup. Cast your bait out there, let it sit. Now, if you're just getting started and wanting to get into stock trout fishing, it's a very easy setup to utilize. And again, you can fish it on a lot of bodies of water, especially ponds, lakes, and reservoir. Now, there's a lot of other techniques, including fly fishing, that you can incorporate for stock trout fishing. But if you're a beginner, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Really learn these 2 techniques, and you're gonna start to catch a lot of stock trout, and you're gonna get really good at stock trout fishing very quickly. Now, when it comes to bobber fishing, the most difficult part is to figure out if your bobber is actually moving or if you've been staring at it way too long. Now, coming in at tip number 8 is to fish close, then far, and break down the body of water that you're fishing in a grid-like pattern. And here's what I mean by that. If you're gonna go stock trout fishing, say a small pond as an example, one of the things you wanna start out with is where do you need to cast? And the way to approach a body of water that you're fishing is to break it down in a grid. Let's say breaking down the section of water into a 3x3. What you're gonna wanna start to do is to cast in shallow, because those fish might be up close, you just maybe can't see them. So cast up close, give it some time. If you don't get any bites, cast out in the medium, left, right, then cast out a little bit farther. And in particular, this is a great pattern to utilize when you're fishing on little ponds, streams, and creeks. You want to break down those bodies of water, but you don't also want to make the same cast to the same spot over and over and over again. Now, if there's fish there and you're catching fish, absolutely you should be casting right into those same spots. But if you're trying to fish for the first time, you don't know where to cast, just break it down simple. Start shallow, start close to you, then cast middle, then cast far. Then you cast to the right, cast to the left. You can try to bomb one out there as far as you can. Instead of getting flustered and just trying to figure out what do I do first, just break it down into a simple system to start. And a great tip, especially if you're fishing in a public area where there's other anglers out there, see how far they're casting or how they're approaching their casting. And if they're catching fish, maybe try to mirror or mimic what they're doing to what you should be doing. Now, coming in at tip number 7, this is something that really helped me get better when I was stock trout fishing, and something I started out early in my fishing angling career, which is to go fish with an experienced angler. And for me, I had my dad and my grandpa who would take me trout fishing. That's who took me trout fishing the very first time and who helped me learn the basics of trout fishing. So if you're brand new into fishing and you got somebody in your family that can help take you fishing and teach you the ways, that's perfect. But if you got a neighbor, a family friend, find somebody who's experienced and go have them take you, or go see if you can go out fishing with them. There's nothing better than gaining hands-on experience from somebody who is more experienced than you when you're starting out. That way you can fish a body of water that maybe they fished before, you can catch some fish. Again, it'll give you experience, it'll give you momentum, and you'll have a really good time. And again, time on the water equals time getting better. Sometimes with everything, if you're learning a new skill, if you're fishing for a new fishery, or you're angling for a new species, it's gonna take you a little bit of time to get really, really good. And if you're beginning into stock trout fishing, same thing. Go with somebody who's experienced and it'll really, really help you get better. Now, coming in at tip number 6, this is gonna be to fish one location over and over to build your confidence. Now, for most anglers, they wanna just get out there and fish any body of water. They're gonna go from this lake to this lake to this pond, maybe just jump around. But actually, you wanna do the reverse of that, which is to try to fish the same lake or the same body of water, maybe not the same exact fishing hole or spot, but fish the same body of water over and over and over again for a few reasons. One, you're gonna start to see patterns and things that start to click in and make sense, like how the water looks, how it's reacting, how the fish maybe are biting there or maybe not biting there. You're gonna start to pick up on subtle cues when you fish a body of water over and over and over again. And when I started out stock trout fishing, I got really good at a couple of ponds and lakes in particular because I fished there over and over again. I figured out the baits, what the fish bit, what times of day. Again, you start to put patterns together, and that's really what stock trout fishing sometimes is about. So if you're brand new and you're thinking about trying to bounce from body of water to body of water, stick with one to start. Keep fishing there over and over again, especially on big lakes. You can fish a lot of different pockets and areas. I think that'll help you get better because again, it's about patterning a lot, finding what's working and what's not working. And this is where you can build your confidence. And again, trying the plunking and the bobber technique I talked about earlier, where you can fish those techniques over and over again. And again, getting better every time out. Now, coming in at tip number 5, that's gonna be to fish with garlic, corn, and night crawlers. Those are probably the 3 scents and types of baits that stock trout absolutely love. Let's break down first with night crawlers. Night crawlers are worms. Trout absolutely love them. There's even night crawler scent that ProCure has that you can add to your bait. They work all year round on all different conditions and all types of bodies of water. And if you're talking about alpine mountain lakes, all down to little ponds and reservoirs, they work everywhere, and that's why I love night crawler. When it comes to corn, you can fish corn out of a can. There's corn baits in the store, or there's the best, which is corn power bait. And if you can find it in the store, which a lot of times you can't, it's probably the best power bait that I think you can have for stock trout fishing. There's also sweet corn scent that ProCure has that you can add to your baits, and I highly recommend, again, throughout the entire year, adding corn scent because it will help you catch fish all year round. And then garlic. It's not that you're fishing with garlic, but the scent of garlic is something that trout absolutely go crazy for. And for me, garlic, again, is another year-round scent that you can use in all bodies of water, all conditions. It's best as that water's warming up in the spring or in the fall time. And if this fish are just being annoying and very subtle, garlic is something you can ramp up on and add to your baits, and it'll give that extra kick scent in the water, and you will get more bites. So if I had to pick 3 kind of scents baits, I would go garlic, corn, and night crawlers. Oh, and by the way, and the real reason why trout really love night crawlers, well, that's the mystery meat meal every Tuesday night at the hatchery. But coming into tip number 4 is to do your research. And with so much access and ability to look up on Google Maps, to look at different styles of maps, to research different lakes, you can go to iFishing forums, you can go to social media sites and look up lake names where photos might be tagged. You can do a little bit of research, and that can help you go a long ways for a couple reasons. 1, you may be able to figure out the best times of the day or the season when the fish are biting. 2, you may be able to hear and find out which lures people are using that might be working. 3, and this is a big one, you can maybe potentially see, depending on the photos or even videos, where people might be standing or fishing, again, relative to different things in the shots, whether they're boat docks or bathrooms or parking lots. Finding some little things in videos and photos and doing a little bit of research can help you figure out if you're seeing people catch fish, maybe where they're at, and then maybe that's where you should be going to catch fish as well. I highly recommend that, by the way. And for me, research, it could be a couple hours worth, but again, that gives you a little bit of extra information before you go out fishing. And if you're beginning into stock trout fishing and you're fishing, say, a body of water you have no idea about, doing a little bit of research goes a really long way. Now, coming in at tip number 3 is to pick the top best colors to fish with to start. That is probably yellow, orange, chartreuse, and red. Now, if you're out there on the market, you're shopping, you're going to your local tackle and bait store, you're gonna find lures and baits of all different colors, all different shades, all different sizes. But when you break it down, if you're just getting started, stick with a few colors that seem to work pretty much year round or seem to work consistently. As I said, that's gonna be red, orange, yellow, and chartreuse. For me, those are the kind of the 4 go-tos that I always typically use when it comes to stock trout fishing. As you get more advanced, you're gonna be changing your colors or experimenting with different colors because trout like the neutral, the natural colors, and sometimes they just like the super bright color. You know, depending on the days, the water conditions, the color of the water, the fish might be biting different color baits very differently, even over the course of 1 week or even the course of a season. Now, something to consider when stock trout are fed, it's a very bland color food. It's like usually gray or brown. So it's your opportunity to go Willy Wonka on them and go super bright with the baits, and the trout may go crazy for them. Now, coming in at tip number 2 is to pick high value fishing spots. And what I mean by that is to try to find areas, if you're starting out, that are very close to the areas where the trout are gonna be stocked. And for me, that's typically near bridges, and the biggest one is gonna be near boat docks and boat launches, because the trucks have to back up and dump the trout in, and when they're recently planted, they're usually hanging around the docks, the launches, a little bit of the spillways, underneath bridges. They're there for a few days until they get acclimated to the water a little bit better, and then they'll start to spread out. So depending on the size of the body of water that you're fishing, you wanna do some research again and find some of those areas that are high value targets where the trout are gonna be hanging out mostly where they're stocked. There's other factors, of course, that go into this in terms of like the depth of the water, how close they are to the bank, if there's steep drop-offs. But if you're just getting started, go after those high target areas. And for me, when I was getting started, one of the biggest clues was just watch where the crowd was at. Where was everybody else fishing? And if they're close to the boat dock or the boat launch, maybe I need to be hanging out there. You obviously don't want to crowd people out of their spots, but look at what everybody else is doing and where they're fishing. And sometimes just being near the crowd will pay off, especially when you're starting out. So now that we've gone through tips 10 through 2, well, what is stock trout fishing number 1 tip for beginners? That is going to be to check the stocking schedule. The majority of states in the United States post their trout stocking schedules. In my home state of Oregon, the state publishes a schedule with the lakes and the week that they're going to stock, which is great to know when the best chance to go and catch those stock trout are. So if you're just starting out stock trout fishing, go right after they've stocked the body of water that maybe you want to go fish. And that's going to give you the best opportunity to catch some fish, gain that experience, get better, and have some fun. For me, checking the schedule is like tracking a package to my house. You know it's going to show up, you know what time it's going to show up, but you check the schedule anyway. And I will say, I check the stocking schedule more than anybody I know. And there you guys have it, the top 10 stock trout fishing tips for beginners. Hope you guys got some great information and some tips today that you can take along your stock trout fishing journey to help you catch more trout. And if you're looking for more stock trout fishing content, I got a couple videos right here that have a lot of details about baits and additional tips as you're getting better to help you become even a better stock trout fishing angler. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. And as always, if you ain't losing gear, you ain't fishing.